Alright everyone, we are all predestined. I came across this on Reddit, so let's go ahead and get into it. How do I tell my friend seeing her naked is a little overwhelming? So, I'm bisexual, and I have this girlfriend. Notice the space in between. She's telling us that that's not her girlfriend. She's awesome, she just radiates confidence, and she doesn't care how people feel about her. She also was naked around me a lot. She's the type to just change in front of me or go nude in a pool if there aren't guys around. I can usually handle myself fine with that kind of stuff, but she, in particular, makes me really uncomfortable in the way that, like, she's overwhelmingly hot and pretty and beautiful. Oh, man, okay. I can't not look at her, but then if, more like when I do, I get stupid, flustered, and then I panic because I don't feel discreet at all. And then I panic because I'm panicking, and I feel like I have a hard time hiding that, and like it's just a lot. I know I'm bi, but it's never an issue, and I really don't think she understands how much she affects me, and I really don't want her to either, because it's embarrassing. And I get insecure sometimes about girlfriends feeling a type of way about me being bi, thinking that I'm a creep that secretly got the hots for all of them. In her case, I kind of do, but I don't want it to affect anything. Should I try to tell her her nudity is a little much for me? If I do, what's the safest, least awkward, and anxiety-inducing way to go about it? Or should I just get a grip and try to ignore it? It feels kind of bad to ask her and only her to cover up. So this is my response to this. From the essence as to how the question is asked, you can see that this was written by a preteen. Questions like this should just not be acknowledged. It's one of the few times the phrase applies to that quote, children should be seen and not heard. However, I can understand that at one point during my middle school days, before the Holy Spirit transformed me, which was a long time before that, I actually did talk like this too. Just to clear up any illusions, if this was my child, I would have had to sit down with her and explain that being quote-unquote bisexual is an MK Ultra construct. It's not real. And this friend needs to leave her friend group, being that this other woman is not a good influence for her growth and mental development. There, I'm assuming preteens or teenagers, so whoever wrote this and this girl she's talking about, this attitude and act is expected, yet also you have to keep in mind that the frontal lobe doesn't develop until the age of 25, so what's obviously going to affect her development being around other girls like this. It states in the book of Jude, in its first chapter on the 7th verse, about the ways of the sodomite. And for anyone out there stating that, well, this only applies to male homosexuality, it doesn't. This is a catch-all umbrella term, essentially what the LGBTQ plus P, whatever it is nowadays. This is the same implication as the days in Sodom and Gomorrah in the beginning of time. Okay, so what it states is just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desires, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire. So in other words, this kind of energy and behavior should just be ignored, not indulged in, being that its central point is sin. As Christians, we are to try our best to live sinless lives, and by that I mean continuously going into prayer and repenting for our sins before Jesus. Things that you read on here on an advice column, things like this are foolish at the end of the day. This shouldn't be really given much attention. We get our strength and guidance from prayer and reading the Holy Scripture, not a false sexuality. All right, everyone, for this video that I made when it comes to the column. So the advice column, this is something that I've been doing pretty much even on the last channel. Like I've been doing this probably about the last 7 years, like off and on. I didn't realize that I actually hadn't made a video like this in a year. So you guys are definitely going to be seeing at least a couple more videos like this within the near future. So, but I do want to talk about, just to give my I guess, more of an explanation, like a continuation on what it is that I wrote, because it's pretty cut and dry. When I was listening over what I had written, it does come off as like very cold, but at the same time, who doesn't talk like this? Like, if you really think about it, like every time you go to a church or you pull up videos online, or you like pull up sermons, if you like want to listen to a sermon or whatever, and you pull it up online, or you go to a church, like pretty much most of it never really focuses on God's wrath and people, like someone that is from God just telling people this is just what it is. This is how it is. And I know that that's a slippery slope, because the whole, facts don't care about your feelings. Like, obviously, that could be manipulated. I mean, obviously we see, what's happening to, this huge downfall of the Colossus that we've known as for the last many years as Ben Shapiro. The whole, it's all about just, well, let's just lay down the facts. And then, then the whole war started with Israel, pretty much bombing and destroying Palestine. And then it's pretty much and then him not apologizing and, just kept going for it kind of thing. It essentially ruined his career. So anyways, just wanted to give more of an explanation to this video before I just post it as is. So you have to understand that at the end of the day, these things are fake. And what I'm talking about is, like, when this girl or anyone online says, well, I'm bisexual. I mean, look, these things are, so within the person's development and how the person's has stages in life, these things normally just go through phases. Like, for like the most part, these things go through phases. And I know that, I'm somewhat of a hypocrite when it comes to, I guess, talking about phases, because I still, in a way, I'm very much stuck in nostalgia myself. And this is something that I've actually been reflecting on over the last day. So what does it really say about me when I'm very much into 90s nostalgia and things from my childhood? So, because in a sense, we should be looking at the now and we should be looking into the future. And so it's more of a thing to me where it's just kind of fun. But it's not, it's not something so much nowadays to where it's something that I keep having to go back to, even though it has consistently been a theme in my life of going back to, going back to 90s nostalgia and things like this, and going back to Y2K nostalgia, anything that had to do with me, going up all through high school. I graduated in 2006, so, and then entered the job force in 2007. So and I'm sure you guys have already heard on my previous videos, I made a couple videos about this, about, the 80s and 90s and nostalgia and, things like that, how everything and culture just kind of started declining in the year of 2005, 2004, something like that. Everything started to decline and nothing ever recovered. So, anyways, so essentially what I'm saying is that these things go through fads. It just goes through, something that you're feeling right now. There's a possibility you're not going to feel that 5 years from now. And then you're especially going to have different opinions and different feelings about it 10 years from now. And then, kind of just goes like that. It goes into different, life is just kind of broken up into pieces. Life is like a book. And every time, that's just how I interpret life, is that life is a book. And whatever year of life you're on, that's the chapter you're on. So I'm 37 years old, so I'm on chapter 37. And the book will go however long God deems for you to live. Because you are technically, every Christian, I personally believe that every Christian is indestructible, because God allows someone to live for a certain amount of time for whatever his purpose is for that person. So, anyways, when you hear something like this of a girl saying, well, I'm bisexual, and then they're asking a question that does not require any therapy,
And you've noticed that this is actually a theme. I'm one of those guys where I like to go online and I like to look up stuff when it comes to advice forums. Like I've been doing this for like a really long time. I like to look up stuff on Reddit. Dear Abby. There was like two. I was even using it on Craigslist for the advice section. Like I like to read things where people would ask something as if they were in therapy, or like for people asking for life advice, or whatever it is. Like I find that stuff interesting, and I like to put in my 2 cents. But I ended up getting comments removed. So, and not just from Reddit, but from different websites, and also Facebook. I'm pretty sure that there was one on there that I was using a couple years ago that was like an advice forum. And, I remember specifically when this person was asking like an LGBT plus whatever question. And it's just, to me, it's just kind of weird that this has just stayed this way. Because I remember when this was very, very prevalent and it was of the culture and these things, this was like 10, 11 years ago. I remember this stuff coming up in like 2014. And it's just kind of weird that we all just didn't move on from this. That this whole, I don't know, because the sexuality kind of goes back all the way to antiquity of people believing this and that, which essentially is like why, large parts of Deuteronomy and Leviticus are there. Because God gave like 632 commandments. And some of it is literally talking about do not indulge in bestiality. Don't indulge in having, if you're a man, do not have sex with another man. Like it's these things that are of what God calls abominations. So, and then you see things that are considered still to this day in summer of 16, it's still considered in a sense that these things are still acceptable when it's like at the end of the day, it's garbage. What this person is saying is just, I understand that whoever this girl is, like this preteen girl, I'm assuming, or teenage girl, whatever, like it's like childish, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure it's like a preteen. So, but at the same time, when you just type in something and something like this pops up, it's basically telling everybody online when you go through this portal to look online that this is socially acceptable and that asking something like this and being like this is acceptable when it's not. It's grotesque sin at the end of the day. So, like as Christians, it's like what I was just saying in my response post is that we are to try to live sinless lives. That is not possible because we have sin, but we are trying to, it's like a battle of good versus evil, but then there's on the outside of these two bubbles that are like opposite magnets, there's a gigantic magnet outside of that of God, which is perfection. So it's good and evil and perfection, right? So basically what I'm trying to say here is that, you're not going to become sinless. That's not possible, but we are to try to be like that. We are to try to, by living with our conscience, and I'm talking about the people that are elect, the people that are saved. Obviously, this person who wrote this is not saved, like it's obvious. Or the person is saved and elect, and it's just not time for that person to come to the faith yet. This person is dead in their sins. So, like, basically what I'm saying is that a lot of people find this to be like this is acceptable behavior. It's acceptable to write things like this online when this is not a problem. The parents should have intervened, but it sounds like it's either the parents are, what is that called? Not a postmodernist, but what is that called? It's when the parents are like just very like, it's like that old timey hippie thing where the parents are very accepting of whatever it is the kid wants to do. But it's like, dude, at the end of the day, it's a kid. Like it's a child. You're not like, there is no authority there. So if I was in the situation as if I was the father and I found this out. Like, I sat there and I read it and I was like, wait a minute, this is my daughter. Like, what the hell is this? And then, so what I would have done is just in the day off that I have, because I work a lot of hours at my job, but anyways, doesn't pertain to the video. I would sit down with my daughter and say, like, hey, okay, number one, you're not bisexual. That doesn't exist. Okay. These are things that are in inflamed senses that has to do with, like, just a love of sin and a love of trying to, and like, but it's like mixed in with when a teenager is trying to develop and find themselves kind of thing. So it's like, well, I'm bisexual because that's what I feel. And it's like, these emotions are not real because your emotions move. They move around. There's nothing, it's like water. Like, you can't solidify your emotions. It's not possible. So, explain to her, look, I'm now not comfortable with you hanging out with this other girl who was like doing this, because it's, at the end of the day, like, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it's degenerate behavior. So I would tell her, like, look, you're not allowed to speak to this girl anymore. If I see this and this comes up again, and you like are doing the whole teenage angst thing where you're like trying to rebel against me, like, look, I'm the adult in the situation. I know what's best for you. So I know what it's like to have to basically figure out most things for myself because my dad was always at work. So, and my mother just was not, like, when I was growing up in middle school and high school, I felt that I couldn't like talk to her. Like, it's just, things were just very awkward back then. So I felt that I had to figure out everything for myself, and me figuring out everything for myself led me down to the road that I took, which was I became a devout Satanist and just eating any Aleister Crowley book I could find, like, online back then, and anything like that. Anton LaVey's, Church of, the Satanic Verses and things like that. These were the things that I was into because there was no guard railings. These are the scaffolds I made for myself. But it's like, dude, I was a teenager. Like, what did anyone expect, like, to happen? And it's just kind of the same thing. It's bad parenting. It just seems like the father figure is either not like there emotionally, or there is no dad. It's just the mom, which is like every other person's story, like here in America. So anyways, if I was a dad, I would sit down and be like, look, you're not going to speak to this person anymore. I find that this person is just not a good influence on you. You need to have someone who is essentially like a woman, someone around your age that is straight. This person is genuinely saved. They go to church and things like that, like, to be a good influence. So, I mean, trying to navigate these things throughout life is very, very difficult. I mean, I don't have any kids myself, but I'm assuming when it comes to parenting, it's like really, really hard, because you're basically you keep talking to the kid, but the kid doesn't want to listen. And so they're just going to go off and do whatever they want. But at the end of the day, I know what's best, so it's my rules. So I'm putting a parameter around this girl. And even if it had to get down to that point, I would just be like, look, dude, if it's getting this bad that we're going to move, I'm going to give you a new phone number. And I mean, she wouldn't even get a phone. She wouldn't get a tablet or anything. That's just rule number one. She wouldn't even get any electronics. Like, I would just throw at her I'll be like, I'll tell you what, I'll buy you a Nintendo 64 and I'll hook up this old timey like TV, and that's what you can use. And I'll put on like Pluto or, some kind of Tubi basic cable or whatever that's heavily, monitored on there. No, you know what? I would just put on PureFlix. I just do that and buy her like video games for old systems and be like, look, if this is going to continue to be a problem, now I'm going to address this with this girl. I'm going to tell her parents, do not talk to my kid. And then we're going to move school districts, and we're just going to move all together, because it would eventually turn into a thing where she's not going to listen. So anyways, and then I would just pray about it and then put it in God's hands as to whatever it is that's going to happen. So I would do everything on my part. And if she's still rebelling, then I would go into prayer for long periods of time and ask God, please move in this situation to get her away from this girl, get her away from this satanic mindset of the whole, God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and he just didn't destroy those two towns. He destroyed the surrounding cities around them too. So this is how serious God takes this particular sin. Okay. So anyways, this is the Romans Warrior 139. I'm out.